Well, for me, it was never a medical lockdown. It was always an economic lockdown. And this started in 2008 when the economy actually died. Um, they have managed to kick the can down the road. The way I described it to people is like a hot air balloon that a hole ripped through it in 2008. So it was inevitable that it was going to collapse then. It was about how long. That's when the QE started in earnest. 2019 was the significant year. You have IMF and BIS reports coming out saying that there's overheating in the market around the June and the August. And then you have Jackson Hole's symposium in September 2019 August 2019, where BlackRock anticipated a crisis and decided that central banks should go direct, more or less cutting out commercial banks. Then 1 month later, you had a crisis in the repo market. That's when the money printing actually just ramped up. The repo market is like it's like a pawn shop for banks where they trade cash for collateral overnight to balance their books. Normally they would lend at a rate of about 2%. That rose on to 10%. The central banks had to step in and try and stem that. That's when the money print, I think it was like 7 trillion. They could not plug this hole. 1 month later, you had Bill Gates' event 201. Then you had the Wuhan. They had to, the credit market, everything is dependent on the credit market. So if the credit market breaks, distribution breaks, hours behind it. The whole economy seizes. We are vastly over leveraged. People don't realize that 97, well, it would be more now, of all money in creation has been created from debt. We are living in a debt economy. It was an experiment when we came off the gold standard in 1971. And it has collapsed under the weight of its own debt and greed. Had they not shut everything down and let debt continue, the economy would have seized. There was close to it under the Obama administration. I think he had to inject 1 trillion into the economy to stop the debt markets from seizing. That's why they had to shut everything down, because everything was going to seize anyway. That brought us to a physical lockdown where there was narrative upon narrative, even though people couldn't see with their eyes what the media was telling them with the virus. They went along with it, because what we have realized is that when banks print money and give it to people, they will literally turn a blind eye to anything. It's always been a financial lockdown. Now we're still in a lockdown. We're moving into an economic lockdown. Step one was to close down all small to medium businesses. They account for about 60% of all jobs. Step two, raise the energy prices. Great way to hide inflation, because they can say that everything, when you raise the price of energy, you raise the price of everything, because it takes energy to produce everything. This is a wealth heist. Inflation is a wealth heist on the poor towards the wealthy. And if you look at the percentage of somebody who's making 10,000 a week, with the increase in energy, they have a small percentage of their income being taken away from them, their purchasing power. But if you're earning 500 a week, that's a huge increase in your income being taken away from you in inflation. That's where I talk about the wealth heist. That's what I mean. Inflation is a hidden tax, and they are transferring wealth away from absolutely all of us, wiping out the middle classes. The money is being filtered to the 1%, while they paid us to stay at home and do nothing. Well, for me, what I said in the video was they paid us to stay at home and not revolt. The most important thing that people need to realize is this is a currency reset. We're going through a currency reset. The purpose of the lockdowns, they took away your right to work, to produce, to socialize, to travel. They're moving on to your right to own anything. How is any of this possible? central bank digital currency makes everything possible. As I said, we have been in a debt-based system, so they had to generate and create more and more creative ways of getting us into debt. So it wasn't just mortgages, it was student loans, it was cars, it was people were getting out credit to buy a kettle. It got ridiculous because it was the more debt, the more money in the economy. That was dependent on us all being consumers. Now they're coming with a growing population, a finite amount of resources, so they either need to reduce the population or reduce the consumption of energy. That's what they're moving into now. They no longer want us to be consumers. We are not going back to that lifestyle. That's over. They're telling you this, the new normal. So what is the new system? The new system is dependent on you being compliant. It's going to be central bank digital currency linked to a social credit score and a carbon credit score. If you look at MasterCard's Do Black, it's tracking your carbon footprint. They can't do that with cash. They rule you by taxes. There's two ways. The government produced nothing. People think that the government gave them money. The government produced nothing. They have two ways of generating an income. They can create money. Therefore, when they create another pound, euro, dollar, it devalues everyone that's already in existence. So that's a wealth heist towards them. They're taking the value out of yours, turning it towards the state. The only other way is taxes. So in this currency reset, they've thrown every currency is in a race to the bottom right now. The far side of this with central bank digital currency, this is nothing like your bank account, your credit card. This is individual monetary policy. They can control where in the economy you can spend it. It's completely programmable, taxable. They can dictate what goods and services you have access to. If you look at the WEF identity in the digital world, they tell you that they can dictate what products, services, and information you have access to or are denied, all capable with central bank digital currency. When they move out of debasing the currency, they're going to move into taxing people. And it'll be under, we're all in this together, similar to after World War II, taxes were at 99.25% at their highest. They had a state tax at 80%. So if you owned property at £1 million, 800,000 would go return to the state when you died, 200,000 would go to your family. So that gets rid of generational wealth. This is where they're moving towards, but it's not possible without central currency. In the carbon footprint, they can track every pound. There's a video of Augustus Carson, the BIS, saying right now when you have $100, we don't know where you're spending that. But if that's in central bank digital currency, they know every detail of what's coming in and what's going out. That makes taxing impossible to avoid because everybody likes to do something to get out of paying taxes. It means that they can tax you. It seems to me that they're working towards carbon credits economy and carbon taxes as their new tax system because it's under the guise of saving the world from climate change. They choose things like viruses, climate change, because there's no source, cyber attacks, there's no initial source to pin them on. And there's no end. When is climate change going to be resolved? When are viruses going to be gone? When are cyber attacks no longer going to be a risk? It's not possible. This is why they're using these methods to control people.
Yeah, absolutely. And the interesting thing about all of those methods, all these agendas tend to overlap. And so when there was a lockdown, they'd say, oh, geez, isn't this really great? What we're learning about these lockdowns is that people are driving around less, they're flying around less, their carbon emissions are therefore lower. Isn't this beneficial for the economy? It's like almost as if that's what they wanted. And then when the fuel price hike happens, when they say, well, this very unfortunate, totally not manufactured war with Russia or anything takes place, suddenly our oil prices go up. We're going to have to ration fuel. And it's like a few months ago, I remember reading about how the Pope and other people were saying things like, we should have car-free Sundays and reduce speed limits for, spins wheel climate change. And now here we are and they're saying basically people are saying the same thing about we need to ration fuel because there's only so much of it because of the war, and we should have car-free Sundays, and we should decrease the speed limits. And it's like, really? But look, so they tell us that we're going to apparently own nothing by 2030. Apparently, we're going to be happy about it. I don't see how, unless they massively demoralize the population so much so that they're just happy to just be barely alive, Melissa. Someone is therefore going to own the property. I mean, there's no such thing as nobody owns anything, right? I mean, this is always the lie under communism has been the proletariat will own the means of production and all the property and everything else. But that's never the case. It's only ever the elite. Everybody else is just brought down to the absolute lowest. We're all equal, of course. We're all equally dirt poor with no rights or any civil liberties. Who's going to own and what exactly?
It's a central bank takeover. Right now, central banks are printing money and they're giving it to these massive hedge fund companies like BlackRock. BlackRock have bought up anywhere between 30 to 50% of the mortgages in America. And that's something I find very interesting because the next step is to keep on raising the interest rate. They're inflating away our purchasing power. Inflation is terrible if you have savings because your purchasing power is being inflated away. So your money's worth at least 10% conservatively. The reality is it's worth about 20%. We're currently in superinflation, so about 20% less. It's good if you have assets because your assets are being inflated away. And right now they are printing money to keep to keep the economy alive, to keep the bubble alive. And it's great if you have debt. So these governments are in massive debt. The inflation is inflating away their debt while it's taking money out of our hands. They cannot raise interest rates at the minute because it's a debt-based system. If they raise interest rates, it's going to pop that bubble because everybody needs this cheap debt in order to function. That for me will be the final nail in the coffin, that they will raise the interest rates. People will have to cash in on their mortgages. They won't be able to afford their mortgage, won't be able to afford minimum payment, that the keys will be handed back over. Very interesting that you will own nothing and be happy, you will rent what you need. That's the significant one. They're wanting to move into a circular economy where everything returns to them. It belongs to, so the inventor, it consistently belongs to the inventor. Obviously, it's going to be a government or shadow government ownership. So you'll rent your house, you'll rent your car. They will have complete control over absolutely every aspect of your life. With the debt-based economy, it used to be like a washing machine, say, just for example, a washing machine would have lasted 10 years when I was a kid. Now, if you get 2 years out of it, you're doing good because they had to build them to break down because then they got you to buy more and buy more because we need to be consumers. They're looking at, they will replace it. They will have ownership of the washing machine in your house. You rent that. So if something breaks, they fix it, they repair it. They're looking for a total control. Now, it's insane, but
actually, just on that point, sorry, it's sort of how I would compare it is there was a time when we used to buy music or films, CDs, physical media, back in the day, VHS tapes, there's DVDs. So we used to buy these things, and now everything is Spotify. Everything is effectively rental subscription model for everything. It's like instead of owning things, you're using Netflix, you're using whatever. And it's been like that for quite a while. They've been conditioning people to the one device that sort of fuels this entire new digital economy, which is the smartphone. Of course, eventually they probably want it to be the transhumanist stuff, technology in the body. But for the longest time, people never actually would go out and own or go out and buy a phone directly. They're always on a contract, and essentially every consumer appliance in your home would be contract based, presumably. I mean, in that article, the woman even talks about how there will be like a self-driving car that will deliver the pots and pans that she needs to make or needs to use if she wants to make dinner. So every little thing, you literally won't own anything. Presumably, I hope that you're going to own the clothes on your back, but maybe a little more. I'm curious. The digital IDs and the digital currencies. To me, it seems these things could have been brought in without the need for a pandemic narrative at all. And by that I mean they've been talking about digital IDs and central bank digital currencies for a while. For several years, long before COVID. But COVID seemed to be the accelerant to the introduction of these things. And of course, the digital ID has will be a centralized, like digital passport, what Max Egan described as a barrier between you and the rest of the world to interact and to do everything. So to have a job, to access social media, to access the internet, healthcare, it has your vax status, it has all these things, it has your social credit scores, your carbon scores you talked about, and it's sort of multi-factor authentication. You have to have all these things up to date, or the digital ID is not valid or expires or disabled, and therefore you can't access your money and you can't buy things and all that sort of stuff. And the digital currencies, we know will be, as you've said, programmable, so they can say, okay, this month we want people buying more of this and less of that, and it's sort of like the Las Vegas casino sort of voucher model of you were a good citizen with your social credit score this week, so therefore we're going to allow you to buy a little bit more of this particular item, or if the climate is not angry today, maybe you can buy less bugs and more real meat, whatever it's going to be. But the thing is that this was where we have to talk about the vaccine, because it seems to me that they could have just said, there's been a lot of cyber attacks lately and the internet's a dangerous place, so therefore we need digital IDs in order to access the internet and all that sort of stuff. And lots of human traffickers and drug dealers are using cash, so we need to get rid of cash. And they could have done all those kinds of things. Cash isn't safe. Cash is la la la. But instead, this is only being pushed through due to the pandemic. And that makes me think, well, we have to ask what's in the vaccine. We have a fair idea, in fairness, because it seems to me that this is about reducing population. They obviously have a vision for the world, Melissa, where not only do they have all this technology and we live in this digital prison system, but that they've said we need to streamline the population. So less people will own stuff, there will be less sort of competition with the elites, so therefore reduce the population. It seems to me that this vaccine has got to be like a slow kill bullet. I don't see any reason why they couldn't have done these things anyway.
Okay, for anybody that says that misinformation or to question if it's safe and effective, it's absolutely misinformation to say it is safe and effective, because much as we can speculate, because we have looked at the clinical trials on the ferrets, the rabbits, etc., there is no long-term data. So we can only speculate based on the animal trials. We are in a global population clinical trial. So we don't know what the outcomes are. Like I say, then they have come from, but the elites, whatever you want to call them, come from an attitude of scarcity. There is an expanding population that's growing rapidly, and they have a finite amount of energy resources. So they kind of want to condition us to take the cold showers while they go about on their jet planes. If you look, even if it was just a placebo, everybody was given a placebo in the vaccines, it was an exercise, considered an exercise in compliance. And if you are willing to give up your medical autonomy so easily, you're surely going to give up your financial freedoms. So they're aware that now that they can get people to give up their financial freedoms, and they will, because when they give out, I fully expect another line of free money to be given to people to kind of, it's for to say, well, there's inflation, so we're going to give you more free money. They're going to run this to the bottom in order to get in their central bank digital currency. Now they need to get rid of cash quick. I spoke to a businessman who has 4 or 5 businesses, and he says before restaurants, bars, cafes, and before lockdown, 50% was in cash. After lockdown, 10% was in cash, and a lot of people are using the watches, you know. And he says, like, before this in bars, it would have been determined about what was the price of a pint. Now people aren't even looking. So they have managed to get rid of a huge portion of people using cash. They needed to do that. While you would have maybe agreed to a digital ID to use the internet, if they had enforced it, they tried this back in America. So they've been slowly moving us towards this. So why so fast, so quick? In 2019, as I say, that hot air balloon that had the hole ripped through. So we're in free fall. They had to move quickly. They need to get us on a digital ID, because they need to combine the digital ID with the central bank digital currency for control. Now, when you look at that level of control, I'm only talking about it in financial terms. What happens if we move into China one-child policy on a global scale, because it sounds insane, but that's literally what happened in China for years now. They have huge demographic issues with it, huge financial issues with it, because these young people now don't want to go out and work because they don't have any benefit system. So you have 4 people dependent on you. They could reduce the population at that side, while also creating issues within us. Because the other demographic issue is that there's a huge amount of people retiring at the minute. Now, where are their retirements? Where's their retirement? In bonds in the stock market? It's not even real. It's overinflated prices. It's a fictional economy. It doesn't actually exist. And when they go to cash in, if there's not enough people paying in, there isn't that money to cash out. So for that demographic to disappear would be hugely advantageous in that sector. But all that money is a human concept. All that it actually is your sweat equity, a saving of your sweat equity for future use. It represents goods and services in the economy and sweat equity. Other than that, it's just a concept. But people have bought into the concept, the numbers on the screen, instead of the actual wealth. Wealth is tangible assets. That's what actual wealth is. It's not numbers on the screen, but people have so bought into this. And that's why there's this manipulation going on right now. But that has, as of 2019, that was the death knell. The economy was, like I say, on life supports in 2008. 2019, it died. We're right now, the body's twitching while they bring in their new system. And it's a collection of millionaires and billionaires that are bringing in this system, and it will not be in our favour. They are walking us into slavery. And I was stunned by the level of compliance. First, with wearing masks, nobody questioned it. Nobody did any research on it when there's 30 years of science behind it that would contradict everything that has happened in the past 2 years. And for people to, majority of people let their kids take part in a clinical trial in order to go on holidays, and that's the hard truth. And I was trying to tell them, listen, you are not getting on holidays. Look at the net zero carbon timeline. They want to eliminate all our travel. So we had last year, could you go, could you not go? And this year we have flights, I think it was like 10,000 reported last month with British Airways alone. Flights are just being cancelled. We're no longer going to be consumers. People need to get that into their heads. That is gone. So if we don't take back the power now, it's going to be a slavery system. And it's very, very dangerous right now, because they have the capability with central bank digital currency, the technology from artificial intelligence. We can be sold into slavery that it would be very, very difficult to create a revolution to get out of. Or right now, we take away the source of their power. Government has got too big. We need a decentralized government. Government needs to be a lot smaller. And the source of their power is that they control the monopoly on money and they control the monopoly on violence. And we need to take away the source of their power. But I keep on saying these people are crazy. They're working on theories rather than reality. So it's not going to work out. Either which way, it's not going to work out. But we're lazy because we will delegate our thinking, our money, everything to somebody else. You take care of that. And until we step up, and it's difficult to put your head above the parapet, you get a lot of abuse. But I can tell you that for 2 years I have been speaking out, and I'm getting less crazy by the day. If you go back and watch my original videos where I was attacked by MMT economists for even suggesting that there could be inflation. But money creation is inflation. The consequence is higher prices. They knew this. Anything that I know, they know exactly what they're doing. They know when they throw the interest rates up that they're going to crash the economy. This is frame everything in the context of an economic collapse that has happened in the past 2 years, and then it will start to make sense. It definitely doesn't make sense for, was it 99.25 survival rate, and the average age of death being between 81 and 82, and the idea that the government care about our health. For anybody to have bought that, nobody bought it. What people took was free money to stay at home. That was enough to silence them. And now it's being taken back off from inflation. There is no way out of what's going to happen. It is a juggernaut and it's heading off a cliff. We have spent 2 years trying to get in front of it and trying to warn people of what's coming. I don't think that that's productive. I think we need to sidestep it and create a different world, because either which way, the old world is not coming back. They are telling you this, they give you the cheat sheets. If you read the information from their websites, from their documents, they're giving you all the information. So it's up to us to kind of create alternative communities and economies, because things either which way are going to get rough. Mathematically, credit can't survive past 2028. That's why there's a rush right now to get in their new system. They don't have the time to get in their new system. So they're going to have to really up the level of control. I don't think if they come back again with another lockdown, there would be that level of compliance. They had to do that because they had to shut down the credit markets. But people now will be asking more questions. Yes, they can predict our psychology, but if you watch Darren Brown's The Heist, he's not, in terms of being a magician, he's not doing anything magical. He's just manipulating your psychology to get you to do things. Very interesting if you watch that and you'd been in Tesco's during everything with the stickers and all the visual aids and the audio aids, to completely, you were being programmed constantly. But he couldn't get everybody to do it and go along. And even when he had them under the spell, he couldn't get them to go along, because there's always that variable that they haven't accounted for. And for me, we are that variable. And the way it works is that we were resistant from the start, but it works in stages. It's resistance, and then you move into rebellion, where we are seeing now in Italy, in the Netherlands, and we've seen it in Australia, because equal force meets equal reaction, and the world is erupting right now. So in the stage of resistance, more people are coming on board from resistance to rebellion. More people are coming on board. Then you move into revolution, where it is the many against the few. So we're taking steps towards that, and they're very aware of it, that their narrative is unraveling with so many people. Those people who got injured after taking it, you don't want to admit to yourself, never mind anybody else, that you made a mistake. But deep down, they know that they put themselves at risk, and this is the consequences of it. It's like people who smoke. When you get cancer, you kind of think, oh, well, you make excuses for it. But they are aware, and they're going to be more angry when something else is imposed on them. For me, it has to be a complete awareness of what central bank digital currency is capable of. That is your phone. They're moving us into a prison, and your phone is your prison warden. So be very aware of what you're putting out. I know that it's great and it's connect us and everything. I don't even have, all this pay on your phone and everything. Don't buy into their system. Don't buy their food. Buy local. They have to move in. They want net zero for shipping. That's a great opportunity. That is a great opportunity for us, because we can now purchase more local and keep local businesses going. What we learned from the whole pharmaceutical field is that people are now moving into what real medicine is, because it's not alternative medicine. It was the Rockefellers that came out and called it alternative medicine. It's real medicine. People are now moving back towards that. They realize that it was Henry Gadsden it was a throwaway article where he said that he wanted to, 1979, he wanted to make a pill for everything. He wanted taking pills as commonplace as chewing gum. So it was marketing. Pharmaceutical was hijacked by marketing rather than research and development, and that's what got us to where we are now. I think by 15, the average child has about 27 jobs. We really need to be looking at this and looking at what other medical conditions are on the increase, and could they possibly be linked. And I think that people are now asking more and so it is an opportunity. My fear is the long-term consequences of the jab, but humans are incredibly resilient. They have been poisoning us for years in what we're eating, and yet here we are. So,
but you're absolutely right. There are those people who have been damaged now, and although many of them will sadly continue to take jabs because they are in such denial that they can't bring themselves to ever admit that they were wrong. And there are those who might quietly discontinue this entire vaccine schedule as well for the same reason. There are also going to be those who will be angry. Anger can be a good thing if it's channeled in the right way and in productive fashion. And those people, I've often said this, that we've had such a decadent and easy life that over the last few decades, that sort of 10 to 15% of people that determine which direction society goes. Most people just go along with wherever the vanguard is going, but that 10 to 15% will determine where we head. And unfortunately, they went to sleep as well. And now I think we might actually generate the numbers that we need to make a positive change. I think I was going to ask you there, what do you think we can do? And I think you've answered that quite well. So I suppose I can wrap it up there on that positive note. Melissa, thanks so much for being on. This is a fantastic conversation. Is there anywhere that I can point to where people can follow your work and your commentaries?
I post on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'm heavily shadow banned on all of them, but anything that I post, I am willing to get into a debate with it. I only post what is factual, what I can back up, because I'm challenged a lot. I have a lot going on in the back of my head that I wouldn't post, so they have no reason to shadow ban me. But the move is moving away from medical disinformation into climate disinformation, and now they're just shadow banning anybody who's talking about the economy, because that's where the real bubble is going to burst.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where people's focus is going to be, and hopefully, as you say, that's where people are going to really wake up, because it's real at that stage. You know, when people's physical assets, their wealth, is being under attack. I'll include all the links below. Melissa, thank you so much for being on.
Great talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you.